So something has happened, something I was not expecting, and something which I had been a little wary of and, to be honest, quite nervous about experiencing, as I really didn't know what it truly meant. Now, I kind of knew logically what this was about, and I had been researching it for a while. But I'll admit to you that I just did not see this coming. And you know what? You might laugh, as the signs were clearly there, but I just didn't see them. And later, I will explain why. So what has happened? You must be curious by now. Well, and it's quite a fun headline, to be fair. I had a spiritual awakening watching a Lady Gaga video. Yeah, that's right. I spiritually awoke whilst watching a Lady Gaga video. So what does this even mean? Well, let's go back to what happened that night. Adam had never seen A Star Is Born. And if you've ever watched it, well, unless you have a difference of opinion, of course, it's an amazing movie. And after watching the film, wiping away a few tears, I said to Adam, you really should look at the Super Bowl video. It is so good. So we popped it on, and halfway through the video, there was a sudden shift. The world seemed brighter, clearer, sharper. There was a shift deep inside of me, and I felt a deep sense of just being present, peace. I felt very still and just free. There was this freedom that was on another level than I'd experienced before. And you know what, without even analyzing it, and it went beyond words, I just knew the truth beyond words, that I had spiritually awoken. I was now awake. So I sat there, kind of stunned, smiling, just absorbing what was happening. And I didn't say anything to Adam. I just sat there, just taking it all in. So this was what being awake was truly like. Though, I'll tell you later why this was just the beginning. But for that moment, I knew I was awake. And what do I mean by awake? Well, the only way I can describe it is how, if you think about how your mind works, how you're pulled into dreaming through your ego, through your thinking mind, or as I've been calling it, the dreaming self, the thoughts that are about your past and about your future, and how believable they are. But when you're awake, you can see them as illusions. You see them as illusions. I was no longer identifying with my thoughts that were being shown to me the way that I had identified with them before. Now, if you're a regular listener to this podcast, or you've watched my videos, I talk about mindfulness. I'm someone who's practiced mindfulness for years, and it was easy to step back and see my thoughts for what they are. But this, being awake, was on another level. It's hard to describe because words don't do it justice. But it was as if my thoughts were more distant, muffled and vague. And there was this being, this expanded awareness, which is everything and everyone, that was just there, now, awake, remembering itself, revealing itself. And I was no longer this separate being called Paul. That had been another powerful illusion of the mind. And that there was only one fact I felt was true, and that I just knew I was this consciousness having this experience, and that I'm just one with everything. Even you listening to this podcast, we're one, though our minds create this separation, this illusion, so that you can feel completely separate to me, even though we are the same thing. We're just different expressions happening all at once. You will have to forgive me because language is quite clumsy when it comes to trying to describe this experience, but I'll do my best. And if you're new to this show and wondering what the heck is going on, my name is Paul Shepherd. You are listening to the Mindset Change podcast. I'm a mindset coach and teacher. I help people with their mindsets, limiting beliefs, to transform their lives into creating the life that they truly want. And if you've not yet subscribed, please do, because you really don't want to miss out on the content coming your way this year, especially with what I'm referring to as the ultimate mindset change, waking up. Now, you could be forgiven, I'd understand it, for thinking, has Paul lost his mind? What on earth does all of this even mean? And to be fair and understandable, the Mindset Change podcast hasn't really been promoted as a spiritual resource, not by myself. When in fact, if you look back at it, it always has been to some degree. And I wanted to make something very clear going forward, because this experience has changed everything for me. And now I'm looking at this podcast and my teaching and my coaching in a whole new light. That waking up and seeing through the illusions of your mind is, as I've said, the ultimate mindset change. Because if you're awake and you know what your mind is creating is an illusion, and you're no longer attached to that, then what's going to hold you back from creating the life you truly want? Nothing. Nothing at all. And we are talking about the life that you truly want, not something that you've been conditioned into believing you want and are struggling to achieve, because there's a part of you that knows you could have something that's so much more you. Remember that it's only your mind that's lying to you that stops you creating the life you truly want. And it does this by keeping you asleep and walking through life in a trance. Think about how your mind is pulled into constantly daydreaming your past and your future. You might think that you're awake, but your mind keeps up the illusion with those daydreams, and that you are separate, and that this is a material world and is exactly as you perceive it to be and believe it to be, when in fact it's nothing but energy which is filtered through your eyes and mind and your beliefs to create your experience of reality. So the term spiritual awakening can have some negative connotations due to the word spiritual, which has been linked with all sorts of strange beliefs. But I want to reaffirm something with you. The word spiritual means the essence of being human, your soul, your spirit, being part of something much bigger than the material world. It's funny because I was going to do a podcast soon at some point. Basically, I wanted to call it Am I Spiritual? Just to clarify a few things, because I've been on quite the journey spiritually. And to be honest, it didn't go so well. It was full of ego, attracting ego. It was very unhealthy for me. And I had a huge crash of faith. And with deep shame and embarrassment, I threw the baby out with the bathwater and became a complete and utter atheist, bashing the spiritual world as completely fake and fraudulent. I dived into the science of the mind and became convinced that this was the way to go forward and that this is a more honest approach. Well, that's what I believed. Anyway, I even remember one friend saying to me, "Oh, you'll be back." And I was like, nope, it's all a load of nonsense. I've no interest in it. It's very damaging. It's very dangerous. And to be honest, there are parts of it I think are quite harmful. And like any part of the world, there are people drawn to the spiritual world who are full of ego and creating very powerful, strong, egoic, spiritual personalities, almost like they're superhuman with superpowers. And I think that's quite dangerous too. But a few years ago, when I was deepening my meditation practices and I was connecting with my own consciousness on a deeper level, my being, my awakened awareness, I could just sense that there was something much bigger than myself out there, but I wasn't sure what it was. And I was hesitant with that. I didn't want to just label it God or the universe that's alive. To be honest, I'm quite happy, and I was quite happy with just being open to the idea that there was something bigger than myself out there. And I would just kind of leave it at that. But what I couldn't get my head around was the strange coincidences and synchronicities that kept appearing. I did explore the psychology around them, and you know what? It kept me very intrigued. But I kept finding myself being drawn to waking up information from people like authors and teachers Sam Harris, who's done the Waking Up app, Adyashanti, Angela DeLulo and Steve Taylor, who has been a guest on this show, by the way, and is coming back soon. He's just released a brand new book called The Adventure, which is for people who want to explore spiritual awakening. And I've listened to it recently, and I think it's a fantastic resource. So he's going to come on the show, and we're going to discuss waking up in a whole new way, because I'm going to be doing it from a position of being awake. But I'm not alone. If you're thinking that this is for special people only, like monks or, religious folk or deeply spiritual folk, then you would be mistaken, because there are a lot of people around the world experiencing waking up moments. And there is a growing movement. I think it's been there for quite a while, but there is a movement to help people wake up. Waking up is one of the most normal and natural experiences that we all can have. And with this awakening movement, there's this wave that seems to be happening around the world, and people are being drawn to, more than ever, to content that helps trigger the experience. Now, I'm not saying that this podcast episode is going to do that for you, but it might help you begin to open up to the idea that waking up is something for you too. After all, you are listening to this podcast in the only present moment of your life that actually matters right now. Now, why do you think this is happening? Why do you think people are waking up all around the world on another level? Well, one thing that I'm aware of are that there are people in power around the world who are in a dreaming state, and their pain is creating more pain for people around them, as well as attracting more people who are in pain to their cause. Now, these people in power are individuals who are very extrinsic in values. They're struggling with a victim and scarcity mindset. You can see the headlines every day from these individuals. They crave power. They're so hungry for it. They're so hungry for materialism, to try to fill the void inside that they feel from being asleep. But they will never fill that void, and neither will anyone else, neither will you, because true fulfillment comes from awakening and remembering the truth of who you are. Of course, we can all create fulfillment for our egos, and we can do that with purpose too. But true fulfillment, depth to the core of your being, will come from remembering who you really are. And I suspect that the world often goes through very dark times in places, as crisis seems to help trigger in individuals an awakening. They sometimes have to seek inner resources to deal with what they're going through, or begin to be open to something much bigger than themselves. Think about why you might be drawn to this podcast, for example. What were you seeking? What were you looking for? What's happening with you? What do you need to change? Is there a part of you that knows that there's something missing and wants to remember, wants to reveal itself to you? And it's not something you can force, by the way, waking up. I've always been on course to wake up when the time was right. In fact, the more you try to wake up, the more you'll be putting yourself to sleep. It's a strange paradox, I know. But just have some trust and faith in waking up will happen at the right time and place for you. And now I'm awake at whatever level this is, which is a continual fluctuating process, which I know will continue to change. Looking back, I now realize I've had more than one moment of awakening before. I just didn't know that was what they were. The first awakening was, and I've talked about it on this podcast before, was that moment where I'd reached a crisis point in my life with anxiety, and it got to the point where I was thinking about ending my life. I was holding a bottle of pills, and just as I was contemplating what to do with my life, because I had no hope, I couldn't see a future without anxiety being part of it and ruining my life, this energy shifted right through me like a lightning bolt, like a surge. And this voice spoke through me, telling me that I had anxiety all wrong and that I had to move back down into my body. And it went again beyond words, but I knew that I was over focusing on my thoughts, focusing on my past, when I had to come back down into the body. And I didn't really know what that meant. But from being guided and exploring more about the body and anxiety, it set me on a path to becoming anxiety free, and then helping thousands and thousands of people do that through this podcast and my videos and coaching and courses. Which, by the way, maybe I shouldn't mention this just yet, but I am planning a membership course this year. I'm going through the details right now with my team, and it's going to be something incredibly special. So if you're interested, keep an eye out for details. If you've not signed up to my newsletter or you're on my socials, please do, because then you'll be the first to be notified of when it's beginning and what you can do to apply if you feel this is something for you. But the other awakening experiences I had were in my 20s and 30s. I would suddenly just felt connected to everyone and everything with a profound peace, but it didn't last very long. It didn't last very long at all. And in my 40s, I had a very powerful experience whilst walking down the seafront. Again, I had a surge of energy just flow through me, very powerful. And I just knew and remembered that I was always in the right place at the right time, in the right circumstances, no matter what my mind tried to say, and surrendering to the present moment instead of resisting and wishing I was somewhere else, someone else, experiencing something else, was just creating resistance and tension inside of me. And you know that feeling, right? You know how your mind pulls you into that daydream that you could be somewhere else, look like someone else, have something else, be experiencing something else. And it really makes you resent the present moment because it feels all wrong to you. But that is one of the biggest traps of the mind. And in that moment, realizing that I was always in the right place at the right time in the right circumstances, released all tension, all resistance, and helped me surrender to the present moment, no matter what I was experiencing. And then, interestingly enough, you can begin to see the gold, the possible gold in what you're experiencing that will help you grow. That moment changed my life forever. But the awakening wasn't done. And it was only a few months ago, again on the seafront, just minding my own business, where this bolt of energy just surged through me. And I knew and remembered that there was nothing I had to do or be. And that meant that I could just let go of any needs I had, drives to achieve anything, which, as you know, can feel quite pressurizing, right? And instead, I could just enjoy exploring and creating experiences that were aligned with what I truly wanted, instead of being driven by pressure to create what I felt would be a successful business that would help as many people as possible. And it does come with pressures, but suddenly that was all gone. Doesn't mean to say that I suddenly just became apathetic. I actually felt I had more energy because now I had a new focus on creating, but without the pressure. It felt very odd indeed. I hope it makes sense. But that release of pressure lasted for a few months. And then I began to drift again into the semantics of running a business and making sure that it's running smoothly and doing quite well. But yet I was still being drawn to awakening content with no real understanding of what it truly meant. I know logically that this is all energy, it's an illusion, everything is perception. But I had my doubts about the awakening experience. I wondered if it was like a disassociation mental health issue that people were claiming were spiritual. I also teach and know the logic around our thoughts, how illusionary they are, and knowing that has been incredible for creating a successful life. I coach so many people into beginning to see through their limiting beliefs, to see through their illusions so they can create the lives they truly want. And it's difficult because it's so easy to believe what the mind shows you. Just think what you could create, what you could make happen in your life if you no longer believed your thoughts the way you do now. But I knew all of that and still, I guess, was a kind of awake. I don't know, but not to the degree I am now. And I remember a couple of weeks before awakening, consciously inviting the waking up experience into my life. I wanted to know the truth. I didn't want to live a life where I was hiding from the waking up experience, just because there was a part of my mind that seemed quite naturally nervous of it. And then, with no warning, whilst watching that Lady Gaga video, it just happened. Maybe there was something in the video that triggered it. Maybe you could watch the Lady Gaga video of her at the Super Bowl and see what happens. But I think there's a lot of other things that were compounding towards that moment. And I soon realized that this is just the beginning. It's not like you wake up and then that's it. You know the truth and then you stay fully awake. Because it wasn't long before my thinking mind, the ego, tried to reconstruct itself with various stories to try and lure me back to sleep. It said things like, I wasn't really awake, that I was faking it somehow. I'm delusional. It's not going to last that long. And you're going to be very embarrassed if you've told people that you've woken up and now you're back to sleep. And that people will think that I'm absolutely barking mad. But what was interesting, and is still interesting, is I watched these thoughts just come and go. I like Adyashanti's description in his book, The End of Your World, which is a book written for people who have awakened and are exploring awakening. I do recommend it as a very good resource. And he talks about awakening as being like a rocket leaving Earth, riding high into the atmosphere before gravity tries to pull you back down to Earth. And my ego was doing its best to pull me back down to Earth, to pull me back into being asleep. And those thoughts, those judgments, those worries about awakening were going to be the perfect trap to do just that. But what I did was I just let those thoughts be there. So it's almost like I can feel my rocket being pulled back down to Earth. And then just by letting those thoughts just be there, it created a release and the rocket just began to rise above the Earth again. Now I'm still on this journey, but I have discovered in this time quite a lot more about awakening, which I'm happy to share with you if you want to know more. If you do, let me know in the Spotify comments. You can comment on each episode or in an Apple review, or contact me directly using the links in the show notes. And I will continue to share my story and anything that may help you awaken if you're not awake already. And just to reiterate, it has changed everything for me. I mean, I can't predict what will happen with it, but I'm just going along with the ride now. And it's changing how I coach and what content I create, as some of you may have noticed on Instagram and TikTok under the username @MindsetChangeUK. And I'm enjoying exploring how I can help others do the same too, but in my way. There's so much great content out there already, I'm going to be clear, but I'd like to explain it in my way. Really make the information accessible and down to earth, easily understandable so you can utilize it. Also to add, being awake has helped me realize that I actually don't have to do anything at all around awakening for anyone else. I don't have to talk about it. I don't have to teach or create anything to help others. There's a deep peace in knowing that I am free. But what I do know is that my being, my awakened awareness, my consciousness is guiding me through life much more intuitively. And it's a creative energy that is always creating, exploring, being adventurous, and looking for patterns of energy to pull together that helps other people. Because that's what seems to help me expand even further. Now, did you know that this is not my only podcast? There is another, and it's called Mindset Change, Another Level. and it contains much more specialized and experimental content around awakening and spirituality. And even if that's not your thing, there are collections around anxiety and mindfulness and healing that you can utilize to help you with your mindset change. Plus, if you are an anxiety sufferer and would like to move towards anxiety freedom, I've collaborated with New Mind Wellness to create a 6-week anxiety freedom masterclass. Decades worth of information combined into a masterclass to help you move towards anxiety freedom. The link is in the show notes and it will take you to a webpage with all the details. I also want to say thank you so much for being here with me, and thank you for letting me share with you my story, which has rocked my world, but I also believe could help you too. So contact me if you have any thoughts about this subject at all. And have a wonderful, peaceful, and present day.